everyone, it's Lindsay with When Nerds Attack with our 5th episode of Dreadfully Yours, our Penny Dreadful review. So we're here with Our World is Hell, and there's something I need to do before I get started. I feel a lot better after doing that. So that's kind of how I feel starting out. That's a little dramatic. I don't feel that hateful towards Ethan, but I'm a little concerned about his characterization. I will say that right now. After watching the episode, I will say straight out, felt like throwing his characterization in the trash. But after some more evaluation, I'm feeling a little bit less harsh about it. But let's get started. We'll focus on New Mexico first, and then I will touch on the storyline in London last. But so we start out with Hecate and Ethan riding in the desert. They're still being trailed by Rusk, and we kind of get flashes of Ethan's past here and there. We see a flash of him washing blood off in a river, but we don't really understand what that means. And they obviously don't have any water. And Hecate wants to know what happened between him and his father, and basically says, "Was your sin so grave?" And Ethan says the only thing that's decent about him is the shame that he feels. And you know what? I'm starting to agree with you, Ethan. You're really trying my patience here. This storyline, as I said in all my reviews, I feel has been the weakest this season. And the fact that this episode pretty much focuses on it, I'm really disappointed in it. I was really excited this season, before the season, going into it, that we were going to learn all this stuff about Ethan's backstory. And I just feel like it hasn't been that strong. And this episode was all about it. And again, I was just disappointed in it. So Hecate starts talking about how God offers him nothing and that he needs to embrace his sins to be free of his guilt. And if we're going to start analyzing Ethan a little bit, he has been guilty for everything that he's done. And obviously we find out this episode exactly what he's been guilty of. And obviously that's a lot to be guilty of. Vanessa's guilt comes from almost an original sin sort of way. She's been guilty her whole life for things, but a lot of it has to do with stuff that happened to her as a child, and she was born the way she is because of her witchiness and this reincarnation of Amunet and things like that. There are a lot of things in Vanessa's life that she can't control. So while Vanessa feels guilt and has a lot of issues with herself, a lot of it is stuff that she has no control over. And I think a lot of Ethan's frustrations and a lot of what Ethan's going through, Ethan feels he brought upon himself. And I think a lot of that is where Ethan's guilt and all of that is coming from. So I get why he has all this guilt and he has all this, has all these issues with it, obviously. And obviously Hecate is preying on that. I don't know if it's a lack of emoting on Josh Hartnett's part, or if it's just the lack of chemistry on the actors between Sarah Graves, I think is her name. I'll correct it up here if I'm wrong. Hecate's actress and Josh Hartnett. But I'm just really struggling with their interactions a lot. I think Hecate was great last season. I've said that before, but I'm really struggling with their interactions here. And she's obviously preying on him, but I just don't feel like there's a lot of give. He seems to be receptive to it, but I don't understand fully why after everything that happened between the witches and him. Besides the fact that, he's guilty and, he's got this demon, it's evil inside of him. I think it might help if we actually knew how he became a werewolf, and as you guys know from watching the episode, we still don't know how that happened. And we're running out of time. I mean, I know we're on episode 5 and we got 4 episodes left, but we're running out of time. We've got a lot of ground to cover with other characters, too, this season, and we're running out of time, guys. And I know that I'm a little freeform talking on this episode, but I think a lot of what's going on this episode needs to be talked about kind of in general as we're going along. So I hope you stick with me on it. So we see Rusk, Inspector Rusk, and the people camping, and he explains how he lost his arm. Now, that entire story really makes Rusk seem like a badass. You know, he was ambushed when he was hunting an assassin. He got his arm chopped off. He cauterized the wound, left the rest of his men who had survived, which wasn't very many of them, caught the guy, dragged him back to civilization, and then took care of his arm. Like, how badass is that? Like, seriously, like, I didn't really like this guy to begin with, but now I'm like, hey, like, you're pretty interesting, and I want to get to know a little bit more about you. It'd be actually interesting to see, you know, his adventures doing other things. And obviously, like, he genuinely knows about the occult and stuff, and I would love to know more about him. Then again, we don't have time to know a lot more about him. Like, let's save it for next season. I hope we can keep him alive and save him for later seasons. Hecate and Ethan are watching, and she, you know, goes and pets a horse and says that she adores honest creatures, and she hates humans. And again, I'm struggling with the chemistry there. That was one of my notes I have in here. I say, honestly, they don't have chemistry, and it's bothering me. I like them separately. They're fine actors and have fine interactions, but the chemistry I'm struggling with. She says, interestingly enough, Hecate says that she didn't choose her master, that her mother chose it for her, and that she was 5 when she was given up to Lucifer, and Lucifer, you know, drug his claws against her flesh. And if that's the case, let's think about this. If that's the case, and she was given up to Lucifer unwillingly, why is she still serving him? Now, given if she feels that her soul's too unclean and she's done too much for him, okay, I can understand that, but I feel like just telling that story, that's not enough motivation for me. Like, I want to know more about her, and I don't know if we're going to get that. Like, knowing that she was turned at 5, like, that's just not enough. Like, at the end of the season, last season, I thought she killed her mother because she didn't want to be taking orders from her mother anymore, and she wanted to be the head honcho, the one that was, you know, getting to get the direct orders from Lucifer, and that she just wanted to be in control, which makes sense if, you know, her mother turned her and her mother took control of her, and, you know, was the one who was calling the shots and stuff like that. But wouldn't she be resentful? Like, and also, Lucifer seems really, really intent on getting Vanessa willingly. Wouldn't he want everyone to be willing? And from what Hecate says to Ethan about how Ethan needs to give himself to Lucifer with this statement and all this stuff, like, it seems that Lucifer wants people willingly. So either Hecate's not telling the truth, which could be very true, because she's a servant of the devil, so why would she tell the truth? Or there's more to it, or they're just doing conflicting, like, characterization, which could be happening. Like I said, like, I feel like some of the writing in the episode I feel like the writing in this episode is a lot weaker compared to last episode, which was such a high point. You know, A Blade of Grass was such a high point. I feel like the writing in this is letting it down. So again, I don't know what's going on there. Interestingly enough, Ethan tells a story of how he got in with the Apaches. So his father enlisted him in the army, and he said that he wanted to make his father proud. And his commanding officer was a senator's son. So we already knew from some of the statements he made previously that he had killed a senator's son. So we know that he killed the guy, but we didn't know how. So they came upon some Apaches in this area that they are in right now, and we find out that they started slaughtering this entire Apache group. And it's important to note that Ethan doesn't specify it, but it wasn't like just an Apache camp. It wasn't like an Apache warriors or anything like that, because he says he killed women and children and things like that. And the officer kills a kid and puts the body in the river to poison the river, and tells Ethan that they're going to get medals for this, and it seems to just snap Ethan. Ethan shoots the officer in the head and basically goes to the Apaches and says, take my scalp, and, I want to die. And as I told you before, I don't really approve of the whole Apache scalp thing, but that's the story there. That's pretty intense and pretty horrifying, pretty horrible. I had pretty much pegged that that's probably what happened, as of what we were told season 1. Kind of, that was my idea of what had happened to Ethan. Some of what happens, what he tells us, what we find out later in this episode, I had not had any idea. But definitely I figured that he had probably killed some Apache, some Native Americans. The Native Americans cursed him. Where this curse comes into play, where this werewolfism comes into play, still don't know. But obviously, he killed all these people and felt this incredible guilt for killing innocent women and children for this. He killed the senator's son. Who cares? Obviously, the senator's son was a horrible person. If he feels guilt over that, he should get over it. That guy deserved to die because he sounds like a psychopath. But Ethan tends to have a really big heart and tends to struggle with a lot of things, so I guess he's feeling guilt over that too. Hecate starts working on him, starts manipulating him and telling him that God watched it all unfold and laugh, and that we can create a world of our own, and that, I'm at your command, and shall we unleash demons, thee and me? And then Ethan immediately just goes, yes. Well, seriously? Really? Really? You don't need to think about that at all. Again, I don't know if it was the acting there or if that was his actual direction, but the fact that he was just like, yep, fine, just use your witch powers, use your demon powers, really bothered me. This is the man last season who got so furious at Vanessa for using her witch, her book, her grimoire, to save, Ethan from having to kill people who, kill that man who was going to harm Vanessa and Ethan back when they were at the, Cutwife's house. So this is, he got so mad at Vanessa for using that and was really upset at her about that situation, about her tainting herself and blah, 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 and was really conflicted about that entire situation. And he immediately is just like, yeah, that's fine. I don't know if that tells us how far Ethan's fallen and how, I'm really struggling, obviously, guys, I'm really, really struggling with this. It either tells us that Ethan has fallen so far and is, so far off the wayward path and is so close to falling, which we obviously know, or Hecate's really good at manipulating, or just they're struggling with his characterization this season. Or it's a combination of all three. I don't think that they have to be separated. I don't think they have to be, it has to be one or the other. And I think it, to be honest, is a little bit of both. And it's disheartening for me because this is my favorite show, and Ethan is one of my favorite characters, and this is really rough. That his immediate yes was just, without any hesitation, was just baffling to me. Because he always has a little bit of hesitation. And after telling that story, you would think that he would have a little bit of conflict over it. Because killing, obviously, he has guilt over killing, but apparently he's not going to have guilt over killing, more people. I don't understand how killing more people is going to absolve you of more guilt. How is that going to free you? Not sure on that, and I don't think Ethan's thinking that through. Not that Ethan always thinks things through, so maybe it's still within his characterization. Again, I would love to talk about this episode a great deal with you guys in the comments. Please talk to me about this, because I'm baffled. So Hecate gets ready, uses Ethan's blood, because she says that Ethan's blood has the power in it, and uses snakes. And uses snakes to conjures up snakes, and the snakes start attacking everyone. And I'll talk about it a little bit because I'm going to have to go down to Malcolm and Ketene a little bit lower and talk about them a little bit before we get to them meeting. But obviously, the snake, it's very interesting to me that, she's controlling snakes. So it seems snakes are the thing of the devil, and Vanessa's thing is scorpions. So there's an ancient Egyptian proverb that Penny Dreadful has used, not in their actual, like, they haven't used it in the show, and they haven't used it in their promo materials, but they've used it in material that they've sold, that says, and it is an actual proverb that's, basically, I'm going to probably quote it, but the summary is, while we were watching the snake, we missed the scorpion. And it basically says that, while you think you're watching the more dangerous thing, you miss the most dangerous thing of all, the smaller thing that, could kill you. And obviously they are this, the demons are the snakes, the witches are the snakes, and Vanessa's the scorpion. And that was more fitting for last season, but I think it's very interesting that she is able to call the snakes, and Vanessa is always kind of associated with the scorpions. So I think that was a good callback to the differences between Hecate and Vanessa. Also, the snakes are kind of useless. Like, yeah, they kill a lot of them, but Rusk gets away, and the other, the sheriff gets away. And if the people hadn't been stupid and just shot at them, they probably would have gotten away. And also, I would probably be conjuring water as opposed to snakes, but that's just me. But she conjures the snakes and they kill a lot of people. Also, at the same time, Ketsune and Malcolm had decided that they were going to kill the men as well, because they said that they need to kill anything that stands in their way of getting to Ethan before Hecate gets to him, before Hecate basically turns him evil. So they said they'll kill anybody who gets in their way, no matter what. So Ketsune is there when the snakes show up, and he ends up getting bit by one, even though he cuts its head off. That can happen. It's a cool scene. He gets bit. I didn't catch it at first, but he does get bit. True story, guys, and I'm not kidding when I say this, like, if you see a dead rattlesnake on the ground, or any snake, like, poke it with a stick. Don't try to pick it up immediately. Rattlesnakes and things like that, their nervous systems can last for a while, and so can the venom in their systems. So if you, picked one up, their systems can still work, and they can still bite you after they've been dead. So, tip from Lindsay on Penny Dreadful episodes: be careful, otherwise you could still get bit by a dead rattlesnake. Like Ketsune did, from the chopping head. It can happen. It's happened. I used to live in Texas. So, take it from a Western girl. Totally can happen. But so that happens, and they're watching it. Hecate and Ethan are watching it unfold, and they hold hands, and Hecate says, "Such music my master makes." And so clearly, Ethan is really under her sway at this point. He's not showing he's not emoting a lot on his face, so it's really hard to tell what's going on in Ethan's head, and it's a struggle for me. Inspector Rusk is so done with this situation, and basically says when he finds Ethan, he's gonna murder the shit out of Ethan and anyone who gets in his way to get to Ethan. And hey, I understand, Rusk. This is bullshit. You're having to deal with a lot of occult stuff, and this occult stuff keeps happening around Ethan, and people keep dying, all these people that you think are innocent and all this stuff, and just a lot of people are dying around because of Ethan. So Rusk, I think, needs to team up with Malcolm and stuff, and obviously I don't want Ethan to die or anything like that, but it seems like Rusk definitely needs to be brought into the crew if they're going to catch Ethan. Or at least, please don't kill Rusk. I just like him so much, and we need to keep him around. His badassery is just too good to lose. So, sorry guys. There we go. So, they need to find a place to hide out because Ethan's horse dies. They have to shoot it. I'm really surprised they didn't try drinking the blood or anything. I know blood has a high salt content and stuff like that, but Hecate's a witch. drinking blood is a thing. I'm just really surprised that we didn't get like a blood drinking scene, like, or anything like that, considering we had Lily and Dorian and Justine like having blood orgy sex, you know, a couple episodes back. So I was really surprised we didn't get something like that when the horse died or anything like that. So yeah, but the horses die and they find a place to hide out. And Ethan starts a fire and they find some paintings and it's really pretty. And there's a picture of a wolf or a coyote eating a sun, and Hecate asks what it means. And again, are we ever... I want to know how Ethan turned. It's important. And this is not the story of how Ethan turned. So it's the story... It is the show's story of the first Apache. So basically their story is that Coyote opened a bag of darkness that spread across the earth, and mankind was all messed up, and a boy was born and defeated them and won back the day, and that boy was Apache. And she asks, is he the savior or the wolf? And obviously I think he should be the savior, but apparently he wants to be the wolf right now. So, interesting thing to note. I need to reload my notes really quick. So, interesting thing to note about this. I have scoured the internet and talked to a couple of my friends who are Native American but not Apache, but do know a little bit about Apache culture, and I'm not saying that they're experts or anything like that. I can't find this myth. Like, I can't find it. Like, if anybody can find it, please put a link to me in the notes. I may just not have been able to look. I was only able to look for like an hour or so, and I may just have been typing in the wrong things into Google and looking on the websites I usually go on, the Native American sources that I've been using. But I can't find this myth. So I'm pretty sure they made it up for the show. The creation myth that the Apaches use that does deal with darkness, they say that the world was bathed in darkness at first, and they talk about that the darkness was defeated by the one who lives above, which is like kind of like our God, but like the one God or anything like that. He's the one who lives above, and they talk about that kind of things. I couldn't find any version of this story, so... And all their creation myths are very, very positive and things like that. So I couldn't find any mention of the coyote even involved in their creation story. The only story I found that remotely kind of reminded me of this story was a Chitwe myth that is not Apache, obviously. It is a different tribe altogether that talks about the coyote spilling the stars. And basically what happens is that our mother basically brought all the people together and had a bag of stars and basically said, hey, let's put the stars up in the sky and we'll make pretty pictures with them, like make them into proper, like the constellations. Like, so it explains how constellations came into being, because they were supposed to be in ordered patterns in the sky and things like that. And I'm going to read off of this. While everyone, including our mother, was gathered to gaze in the luminous morning star, Coyote tiptoed over to the jar of stars to see for himself what man was doing. As he lifted the jar's lid just a little, the stars rose to the occasion, pushed the lid away, and raced to the sky. This is the reason so many twinkle without order or pattern, and why so many are not named. Our mother was angry with Coyote and said that because of his mischief with the stars, Coyote would forever be a wanderer and bring trouble with him wherever he may go. That some days he would be happy and abundant, and other days he would see unhappiness and hunger. Now, doesn't that sound like Ethan right there? That some days he would be happy and abundant, and other days he would see unhappiness and hunger, and that he would bring trouble with him wherever he goes? Like, that's a great myth right there. It's not Apache, but that's a great myth right there. That's perfect and rife for Ethan. And there you go, talking about like the stars and the darkness, and it's and almost like chaos. It brings that into it. Like, I think that's a great myth that they could have incorporated. So again, I don't know if they made that up. They made up their Apache creation myth, but I don't know. And so I wanted to share with you another story that I found that I think would have been really applicable as well. I read something interesting that I didn't think about. I didn't think about it at all, but someone did point it out to me, was that it's kind of not good that they took a Native American creation myth. Like, if this, basically they took this Apache creation myth about how the Apaches came to be and made it about a white guy. That is he the wolf or the savior? But no matter what, even if they've named Ethan a fake Apache, he's still a white guy and not real Apache. So I read that somewhere, and that's a good point to make. And it's a good point to make. I hadn't thought about that, and that's something to think about. So we find out that we get to hear, before we get back to Ethan and Hecate, we find out that Ketene tells the story of how Ethan came to them after his entire tribe had been killed, and that they decided that it would be better to keep him alive, and that he fought with them no matter what. And let me find the story. How Ethan wanted to die, and that he fought his own army with the Apaches, and that he wanted to redeem himself or die, and that there were only 39 free Apaches left when he started fighting with them against 5,000 soldiers to hunt them down. And they were hunted things, and they turned cruel as they started dying, and they did monstrous things. So I figure the monstrous things, well, I had figured at the time that monstrous things meant Ethan turns into a werewolf. No, it has to do with his family, but we'll get to that. So basically, we know that's what happened there, and we now know obviously we're going to get to why we know the monstrous things. That will also explain why Ethan wants to kill Ketene if he ever sees him. So, Ketene will kill an entire army to save his son's life, to save Ethan's life, but Ethan will kill Ketene on sight for obvious reasons, which we will get to. And Ketene says, if he dies from his snake bite, fine, whatever, but you've got tells Malcolm that he's got to save Ethan no matter what, and if he if he doesn't survive, you can't allow him to fall to darkness, because if he does, everything is going to fall into darkness. And we see a vision of, what will happen if Ethan falls. And we actually see, London, and we see Chinatown and things like that, and all these beasts, feeding on gross things, and Ethan is all messed up. And so it's going to be evil. And he says that if he falls to evil, the night will never end. So it's not a good thing. Really, 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 really bad. And speaking of that situation, we get back to Hecate and Ethan. And my trash can. So Ethan basically says that they were running out of things. They were running out of supplies and things as all of the Apaches were dying, and he knew that there were supplies at his father's ranch, and that he knew where everything was, and Ketene had promised that shots would not be fired if they went to the ranch, and he gave up everything there. And he doesn't really fill in the story, but then he just says, I'm done being good. and decides he's going to have sex with Hecate. Okay. Here's the thing. Vanessa fell, Vanessa's had her temptations, and I don't disagree that Ethan should have his temptation. Like, Ethan having his temptation, Ethan having sex with Hecate, I actually don't have a problem with. Like, her seducing him and stuff like that. Like, he's been under so much guilt, and obviously what we find out happened at his place, like, obviously he's been under so much pressure and so much strain. It's not a surprise that this kind of thing happened, and he would fall like this, and he would be able to be tempted and strained. But Vanessa always put up a fight and had a great deal. I felt like she had much more of a emotional fight that we saw on her face and stuff before she ended up falling and before she gave in to anything that was going on. And I don't know if it was direction. I don't know if it was acting. I don't know if it was the chemistry between the two actors. But I feel like we were missing something when Ethan's just like, I'm done being good. Let's give it up for Lucifer. I don't want to, feel this anymore, so I'm going to try the Lucifer side anymore. Like, he's been told repeatedly that if he gives in, all the world will fall to darkness. That's why Vanessa fought it so hard. And obviously Vanessa doesn't have the same kind of self-brought on guilt that Ethan does. And like I explained why earlier in the video. But at the same time, like, I just feel like this is unearned. I'm really, really big on earned moments. And I feel like this moment wasn't earned. I don't feel like we've earned this. And so I just feel like his characterization is really struggling and suffering in this. Again, like I said, I don't have a problem with him being tempted. I don't have a problem with him falling and being like, screw it. Let's try it, and falling for her and being seduced. And I don't have a problem with him even saying, like, I'm done. And I'm falling to the temptation. That's okay. But I just question the way it's been done. That's the distinction here. I don't have a problem with what is happening. I have a problem with the how. Basically. So while they're having sex, she says that when he kills his father, that he needs to say, Lucifer, I am your animal, and will give him, he'll no longer be the wolf of God. I guess he'll be the wolf of the devil. So that is something that we have to be careful of, and obviously that's going to be something that comes into play next episode. So, yeah, that happened. I know a lot of people are upset about it. I really like Vanessa and Ethan together, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. But that's not why I'm upset. Again, like I explained, I don't have a problem with Ethan falling and having this issue. I just have a problem with the how, as opposed to, I have a problem with the context of it, I guess, and the content and how it's been written. I think it could be done better, and it's been done better on the show before. I just don't think the content is as good as it's been for Vanessa, and I think it could have been written better for Ethan, and I think it could have been emoted better, much, much better. So, the horse dies, Hecate has to be carried, they are a complete mess, dying, and here where the storylines converge with Ketene and Malcolm finding Hecate, and Ethan is like, why the hell are you here? Malcolm tries to shoot Hecate. Ethan tells Malcolm that if he tries to shoot, if he shoots her, I'll shoot you. Malcolm realizes how bad this is immediately. And bless Malcolm. I am so excited for Malcolm trying to take care of this situation. Ketene is in a bad way. And before anything else can happen, Daddy shows up. And oh my gosh, I am so excited for Daddy. That sounds really bad. I'm sorry. Ethan's dad shows up and takes their weapons, and or not his dad, but one of his dad's helpers, And they ask him, Ethan, what they want to do with Ketene, and Ethan says, let Ketene die slow. And man, Malcolm is pissed off about this situation, but he can't do anything about it, and he's taken in with Ethan and the rest of them. Ethan wakes up and his dad's taking care of him, and Malcolm gets ready for dinner. Malcolm and Ethan's father, Mr. Talbot, start talking, and it's Malcolm actually starts trying to lead the conversation and explains why Ethan has been living with him for so long, and we find out through the conversation that Mr. Talbot had a daughter, so Ethan had a sister. Not something we knew before. We see in the picture that he had a son, he had a brother, but we didn't know he had a sister. Interesting enough, Mr. Talbot and Malcolm continue to talk after Hecate. Hecate walks up in a weird doll room. It's obviously Ethan's sister's room. But Mr. Talbot and Malcolm keep talking. Mr. Talbot's like, I killed all these Apaches. I have mountains named after me. And it's such a great contrast between what Malcolm used to be and what he is now. And Malcolm says, what's the cost? Because Malcolm used to care about, I have mountains named after me. I did all this amazing stuff. Well, look at all the things he's lost. And it's just a lovely contrast between the two of them. And Mr. Talbot says, we're not the same. I still have a son to save. I have a child to save still. And you know what? Malcolm says nothing, but Malcolm still has 2 children to save. He has Ethan to save, and he has Vanessa to save, but he doesn't need to say that because I don't think it'll go over well. But again, it's just a lovely contrast because Malcolm can see himself in Talbot. I think he's just disgusted on how he used to be. So Hecate goes to Ethan's room. They have a little moment, and then they both go down. Ethan ends up going downstairs to talk to his father. Yeah. He ends up saying, they both say that they can't forgive each other, but man, amazing performances by both of them. I think it really goes to show, I'm going to put the name of the actor for Ethan's dad up here, because I can't remember his name right now. But man, his dad just basically says, I'm going to save your soul no matter what. And you say, you think I kill all these innocent people, but I don't know what innocent mean. I killed all those innocent people on the train. What does innocent mean? I don't know what innocent means. Your sister was innocent. And you need to atone for what happened. And Ethan says, I have no intention of repenting, and because I wasn't there. And Ethan and Mr. Talbot goes, yeah, you weren't there, but you know what? I kept everything the same way. Let's go see what you not being there did. And this scene, there's no way I can explain it. You guys, if you want to, I'm not really going to talk about it because there's no way I can do that monologue justice. But looking at that chapel with all the blood and the chaos that clearly went there and the lighting and everything was just heart-wrenching. And just the continued story about how his daughter, Mr. Talbot's daughter and Ethan's sister had her tongue cut out and her eyes carved out to make her blind and mute. What the hell? No wonder Ethan wants to kill Ketene. I would. And no wonder, he carries such guilt with him. It explains so much about him. Still doesn't explain the werewolfism, but explains so much about him and explains why his father's so upset. There's still so many questions we have here. I'm not quite sure what he blames his father for the situation exactly. Obviously we could get into it and I could do a whole new video on that. Obviously he blames his father for getting him into the military, which got him into the situation, which cascaded and blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of hate in this family. And there's a lot of blame to go around. So Mr. Talbot says, repent for your sins, and while tears in his eyes, you know, Ethan says, I'm done repenting and I belong in hell. The amount of self-flagellation and the amount of just hate Ethan has for himself, like, jeez. Like, that's what Hecate is preying on, and that's what Lucifer's preying on. And, like, somebody's got to help this boy, and I hope Malcolm can, because somebody needs to, otherwise we're all in trouble. And it's just painful to watch him be so upset at himself. And that scene made everything make so much more sense. I just wish it didn't take so long to get there, because I felt like all those scenes really, really dragged. I felt like this episode dragged, sadly. But yeah, so that was that. Again, I feel like Ethan's characterization is kind of suffering. I've kind of covered it extensively in this video, and I don't really want to go into it anymore, but I think you guys know how I feel. Touch on Jekyll and Victor's story just a little bit. I know this video is getting a little long, sorry guys. But we see that Jekyll has electrified the whole room. I mean, not Jekyll. Victor's electrified the whole room because he's crazy about his electricity. Like, boy. He ends up uses the electricity in the serum and gives it to him through his eye. Like, jeez. For the record, guys, ether was a thing. It could knock people out. Like, knock the guy out. Like, did he really have to be awake for this situation? Like, please, like, use some ether. It's okay to knock this man out. I don't think he needed to be awake for the, like, procedure. Use ether, use those little, like, blue things, and just zap him, like, ether. It's a thing, guys. It existed in 1892 or 1893. I promise, look it up. More knowledge. But yeah, so when he says, like, hey, when I do this, you're not going to have memories of anything that made you mad and anything that upset you because your memories are what makes you monsters. Like, Victor, that's really screwed up that you're going to take someone's memories away from them and that you're going to take away their agency, because memories are what make you who you are. Yes, your memories make you a monster, can make you a monster, but your memories also form who you are as a person. And Victor's just completely off his rocker at this point. It's kind of amazing to see. He's kind of going full on, like, villain turn here. The guy hasn't woken up in 24 hours. As I like how Victor puts it, and he's like, 24 hours with no aggression. And Jekyll's like, yeah, well, there hasn't been any consciousness either, so that's why he hasn't been aggressive, buddy. Victor apparently got cast out of school for his methods. Jekyll got cast out because he aggressed towards a teacher, and he feels it's because of who he was, his skin color and things like that, because the teacher said something to him. And man, like, Victor just has privilege. Like, he thinks that they're equal. He thinks that they're the same fellow outcasts. And, like, check your privilege, Victor, because the way that you talk to Jekyll is just disgusting and gross. And the way that Victor talks to everyone at this point, like, he's always had arrogance and has been kind of a jerk to everyone, and I've kind of loved him for it. Like, he's been my lovable trash bag. But he's, like, not that anymore. Like, he's gone full on just, like, forgive it, like, douche lord. Like, he's gone off the page. It's really fun to watch, but, like, geez, man, like, he can't control it anymore. And he says that he's going to do this to Lily. And what's interesting is that Jekyll doesn't seem on board with it so much anymore. And, you know, I think that's really interesting that Jekyll seems really, really conflicted about this now. He doesn't seem really on board with it anymore. And Victor says, you know, when Lily was, at the beginning, when Lily was docile and stuff, that he was truly happy and all of that. Like, it's all about Victor. That's the thing. That's what we get to the core of this. Everything is about Victor at this point. Victor only cares about himself. He's very, very selfish, and that's what it all boils down to at this point. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. He's using Jekyll, he's using Lily, he's using everyone. And I hope he pays for it in the end. I hate to say it, I love him, but he needs to pay for it. Sorry, buddy. And it seems to have worked. Balfour wakes up and it works. Victor goes back to his room and we see him sniffing Lily's nightgown, and then he cleans up his workspace. Victor, you are a human disaster. Stop sniffing nightgowns and get a life, please. So that is the episode as a whole. Again, after the high that was A Blade of Grass, this one was just a letdown for me. It had some good points. I loved the stuff with Ethan's dad. I think some of the backstory that we finally got with Ethan was really good, and I think it does give a backstory, a good reasoning on why he is what he is. I just feel like some of the decisions he made, his heel turn, was just too quick. I feel it was coming. There's no doubt that it was coming, but geez, like, just too fast, guys. I feel like everything was too slow, and then all of a sudden too fast and too slow. Like, we needed to have at least some conflict in his face. I feel like everything was just too stoic. And so when words were being said, I didn't see it here. So when someone says, like, yes, I'm done with being good, like, okay, come on. Hopefully things will be better. It looks like we're going to have a very tense dinner scene with Daddy next episode. I did want to bring up something that I read. To think about next episode, I want you guys to think about this for next episode, since we are going to see Dr. Sweet and Dracula and get into that storyline again. Read this theory, and I thought about this, and I kind of agree with it, given, I've kind of gotten on this whole thing where I kind of, Dr. Sweet's and Dracula is going to be a little bit more complex, and think about this. So, Dracula is of Earth and Lucifer is of the spirit world, and they're obviously at war. And we know that Lucifer, we know from, especially this episode, and we've known from the episodes before, that he wants to wipe out life on Earth. He's all about, like, just all this death and destruction and just feeding and all this. But where does that leave Dracula? So Dracula and Lucifer wants souls, and he just, he's told Vanessa that, I'll kill your friend, I'll let your friends live for a little while, but then I'll take everything and just hell on earth and all that stuff. But Dracula needs human life. Humans have to survive for him to survive. So where does that leave him? He needs food source. So if he needs Vanessa on his side to fight Lucifer, because obviously, if Dracula doesn't want Lucifer to win, and he needs Vanessa to win, and if Lucifer wins, everything falls to darkness, and so far no one has said that everything falls to darkness if Dracula wins. Because we haven't heard that, for the record, guys. We haven't heard that. We've only heard that because we've heard, obviously, if Ethan falls to the devil, if Ethan falls to Lucifer, everything falls to darkness. If Vanessa fell to Lucifer, everything fell into darkness. Yeah, I know that Dracula is part of the devil, but we haven't heard, if Vanessa falls to Dracula, everything falls to darkness? So maybe he's the goodish guy this season. Think about that. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So maybe he's in some strange way an ally. Or maybe it's wishful thinking. I don't know. It's a theory. An interesting one at that. I have been thinking about it in my head, and I would love to talk about it with you guys. I know this video is long, but there was a lot to talk about this episode, so feel free to talk about it in the comments with me. And again, this was Dreadfully Yours, and I'm Lindsay with When Nerds Attack, signing out.